am so happy and thrilled to be here and thrilled to accept the invitation to participate in this important discussion and be a part of Dallas Influencers in Sports and Entertainment's program. I was first exposed to DICE as a judge for their annual charity event, Fast Pitch, last year, and was amazed at their efforts to help children of North Texas. Through your support and via memberships and sponsorships, DICE hopes to host more events just like this and give even more to local charities who need our help. I do have to share a personal story. As a judge, I was so moved by what DICE was doing, and I was moved by one of the charitable organizations that were giving a fast pitch that I actually afterwards ended up volunteering with them and working with their kids. It's a group called Rainbow Days. Excellent group. You can talk to me later afterwards if you want to. But I just definitely want to encourage everyone to get involved. And to give you a sense for all the good work that's being done in our community and how much help is needed, DICE received 109 grant applications this year alone. So, in saying all of that, I hope to see you at Fast Pitch 2018 on November 15th at Canton Hall, where the final 6 deserving charities will compete for $100,000 in grants, plus we'll be honoring Clayton Kershaw for his charitable contributions. Now, enough of me. You didn't come here for me, unless you wanted to talk Bachelorette stuff, which we can do that afterwards. I want to introduce our esteemed panelists that will be joining me up here today. And you can start making your way, you can start making your way up to the front as I call your names. Bob Bowlsby, Big 12 Conference Commissioner. Yes, you can give a round of applause. Gina Lehe, College Football Playoff Senior Director of External Relations and Branding. Michael Konradi, Cotton Bowl Chief Marketing Officer. Judy MacLeod, Conference USA Commissioner. And Andrew Springate Keurig, Dr. Pepper Chief Marketing Officer. I don't want to waste any more time. I just want to get right into it. I'm very excited to hear what this esteemed panel has to say. I promise the questions are not that hard at all. So let's just get right into it. We're talking about the college, or the future of college football. And Bob, if I can call you Bob, I'll start with you. What are the biggest challenges your universities will face over the next 10 to 20 years? And what can you do to help them prepare for these challenges?
Wow, that's a broad question. I think foundationally, one of the things we need to do in college football is we need to make it a safer game. It shouldn't be a game where you have to change the way you live the rest of your life in order to play the game. And so we need to deal with issues of head trauma and some of the other things that are unsafe about the game. But beyond that, there's lots of competition. We've now created a television property that is every bit the competitor that the stadium is. Sitting at home in front of your 70-inch TV is good competition for the stadium, and you don't have to commit 8 to 10 hours to it. So there are no lines at the restroom. The beer is always cold, and it's usually cheaper than it is in the stadium. And so, I think that we have competition of our own making. We need to keep the game strong, and I think we need to make it safe, but we also have to realize that the way people consume their sports, even live sports, is evolving. And so that's going to continue to be a challenge.
Judy, I'll ask you the same question. What are some of the biggest challenges that your universities will face over the next 10 to 20 years?
I think in addition to what Bob said, for our group of schools, our challenge is to remain relevant. I mean, we kind of cherish the underdog role. I'll get it in early if anybody didn't see the North Texas at Arkansas game last week. But how do we continue to compete and stay relevant and make sure our programs and our universities can expose themselves on the national level? And so we'll probably talk finances as we go, but as the financial divide becomes greater, how do our schools continue to have that opportunity?
Andrew, I want to bring you into the conversation here. The economic model of college football, a lot of it is based on sponsorships, and Dr. Pepper has one of the highest profiles of any brand in college football. What makes college football so attractive to your brand?
A couple of things come to mind really quickly. Foremost is that there is a ton of passion for college football. It has challenges like every other sport, but if you think about it, it is the second most watched sport in the country. It has tons of energy underneath it. It's got dynamic teams. And I think the other piece that really stands out to me, besides just the popularity of the sport, is if you think about what we try and do with brands, is connect at a local level and connect with people's passion points. And people are so passionate about their schools and their college football programs. It's just a natural, great place to link to. We are super thrilled to be partners with the conferences and great bowls like the Cotton Bowl. So it's things that really make sense for us.
College football has changed so much over the years, the decades. What do you think sponsorships will look like in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing about sponsorships is they'll have to continue to evolve and be relevant. I think, if you look at the changes that have happened in terms of media, there's a lot of different media partners now, Amazon, Snapchat. We've got to think about how to do that, but I think that's some of the advanced thinking in terms of reaching people that we can do and help conferences with. I also think there'll be a continued change in terms of one-to-one connection and kind of expecting to be able to watch whatever you want, wherever you want it. And I think that's some of the challenges right now for everybody to kind of keep up with the rapid new media. But I think that's the fun part about all of our jobs, is kind of thinking about the future. And to me, that's something we'll all get right and continue to keep college football really at the front of everybody's mind and a real big passion point.
Keeping in line with the future and some of the changes that have come about in college football over the past few years, looking back at the transition from the BCS to the CFP, that's been highly successful. So Gina, I want to ask you, how have the first 5 years of the college football playoffs, how have they gone?
Well, I've had the very great fortune to be witness to this significant change. I was part of the BCS process, if you will, for 16 years and was there for the first game and the last game, and then the first game of the college football playoff era. Alarmingly, it's been extremely popular, but I think it goes back to some really key elements that came into place in early 2013, 2012, when we were talking about the formation of the college football playoff and some of the key goals, those being to build trust, simplify the process. A lot of what was complicated about the BCS is people just didn't understand it. And when you came back to talking about how teams were ranked and placed, the computer system just didn't make sense. And because of that, it built a lot of bad will and not trusting the system and the process. So we've been very fortunate. In year one, we actually were awarded the Sports Business Journal Sports Event of the Year and beat out brands like the Super Bowl, like the US Open in golf, Major League Baseball All-Star Game. And we were a little bit shocked about that because it was so well received. But again, ultimately, we felt we were providing a postseason that people could understand, explain. And again, not to throw out too many numbers, but they are ones that we're proud of. And there's several folks up here on this panel that we have to thank for that. Our board, our commissioners, our sponsors, our bowl partners. But our approval rating right now is unbelievable. And I think arguably people would give anything to be in the 80% approval rating of understanding the process and our selection committee right now. We often joke that if politics and the White House could get those kind of approval ratings, this country would be in a lot better shape than they are. But we've seen those ratings stay consistent in that 80 percentile year over year. So we're fairly confident we're not only getting it right, but we're also explaining it and making it a process and a format that people can understand and trust.
Gina, what role does ESPN and other networks play in ensuring the future success of college football?
I think their involvement for us is significant, and that's probably not a great enough word to discuss. Their role, obviously, from a financial standpoint is amazing, unparalleled. but their support in every other facet of it is what kind of goes unseen, and whether that extends out to partners like Dr. Pepper, who utilize campaigns to highlight our brand and our trophy and continue to tell that story in untraditional means. Also the opportunity to show our games on the various platforms, the mega cast that they do around the national championship game. This is a top priority for them. What we've also seen the last 5 years, because of their parent company with Disney, very few times will Disney make non-movie Disney World type events a priority into their kind of marketing and year-round system. And we were the first sporting event to kind of earn that level stature with that company. So we've gotten buy-in from Marvel Comics, The Bachelor, doing plays again on our brand and our trophy, so that we can bring in more fans to college football. We know what we need to do to target avid fans. They're going to turn on the TV and watch our game and consume college football no matter who's playing. But reaching out to those other demographics that maybe we did not achieve during the BCS era, ESPN's helped us reach that market. And again, in year one, we saw significant percentage increases in markets that really otherwise had not been touched or moved the needle in a percentage standpoint, from women, Hispanic marketplace. So all of those have been priorities for ESPN to study, analyze, and figure out how they can help us and the brand of college football kind of rise into that other demographic area that we hadn't hit prior to the college football playoff.
I love that you mentioned The Bachelor, because it links why I'm here. When people are like, what is The Bachelorette? The Bachelor involved with college football playoffs. So thank you for that plug.
There was a great little promo with the trophy, a little play on The Bachelor and the trophy, getting roses last year on ABC. So it was a nice tie-in, but again, segued into another demographic that we otherwise wouldn't have touched.
Absolutely. Michael, the Cotton Bowl, right here in our own backyard, it has such an amazing and storied past. How has the postseason football landscape evolved from a bowl perspective?
Well, certainly on the surface, if you look at the bowl landscape, I mean, there's 40 bowl games now, and potentially more coming. And ultimately, we have 4 in North Texas alone. The advent of the college football playoff obviously is huge changes in that regard. But I will tell you, as it relates to our organization and what we do, really what we're responsible for hasn't changed since the game started in 1937. And that's to create an amazing experience for the student athletes. And that gets lost in the stories way too often, and we need to do a better job as Bowls to tell that story about how at the end of the day, we're in the business of creating lifelong memories for the student athletes. They put up with a lot. And it's not just the student athletes too, it's pageantry. It's the staff behind the scenes. It's the wives of the coaches that have to put up with their husbands being gone all season. So for 1 week to bring them to North Texas, to show them the best of what we have, to take them to AT&T Stadium, the best venue in the country, and show them what a great time they deserve, and to hopefully create those memories. So really at the end of the day, it's not a whole lot different. Yes, everything around us has changed and we've had to evolve, and we've done that, but for 83 years, it's about creating memories.
Not that you're biased or anything, but would you say the Cotton Bowl is stronger today than it was 25 years ago?
Yes, I mean, quite simply. I mean, we're part of the college football playoff. We're in the top tier of postseason college football. We have the greatest support that we've ever had from a corporate partner perspective. Dr. Pepper's been a partner of ours since 1937, since the game was founded. And we just continue to build. AT&T Stadium obviously has taken us to a whole nother level. We loved our 73 years at the old stadium, but AT&T Stadium got us to where we are today. Along with it, a lot of great work, a lot of people in this room, honestly. So I would definitely say yes.
I want to shift gears a bit. I want to read a statistic. Participation in high school football is declining. The number of participants in high school football has dropped 7% over the last 3 years. So Bob, recently some high-profile Hall of Famers have come out and said they would not encourage their grandchildren to play football. What steps have been taken by college sports leadership to make the sport safer for the next generation of players? I know you touched on this a bit about some of the challenges that your universities face.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's one answer that is going to solve all the problems. The numbers are down. It's regional in large measure. The numbers are not down in Texas, as an example, but they are falling year over year, 15% nationally, and so it's a real decline. Soccer moms are making decisions as to whether or not their young boys and girls are going to play football. There's a growing body of research that indicates that kids under 14 years old shouldn't be playing tackle football. And as we know, I mean, this city's a good example. We've got kids that are 5 years old playing tackle football in fairly highly organized operations. And so, you know, they're, interestingly enough, and I'm coming off 3 years as the chair of the NCAA's Football Oversight Committee, there is not much empirical data around about injuries in the sport of football. There is particularly not much information with regard to what repetitive use does in terms of head injuries, what the ongoing impact of concussive activities are. We've spent $30 million over the last 4 years doing a concussion survey or concussion study with the Department of Defense, and it's just been extended for another 4 years at about the same amount of money expended. But we are working very hard to try and come up with some longitudinal studies that will tell us when is the right time to start. USA Football, which is an organization that is comprised of college representatives, the NFL, Pop Warner, the National Federation of State High School Associations, are all collaborating in USA Football to try and come up with a continuum on which young people start to play the game. And of course, we're also spending a lot of time articulating that football matters. It's had a terrific impact on our country. Saturdays are special. Friday nights are special. We don't want the game to go away. We want it to be stronger in the years ahead, but the NCAA got started 115 years ago because President Roosevelt saw that people were dying in the sport of football, and it was the beginning of the NCAA. And you know, it's not okay that kids are dying in off-season conditioning practices. It's not okay that people have CTE when they're 30 years removed from playing college or high school or professional football. We need to find ways to fix it. Some of it's helmet technology, some of it is rules variation. I'll give you an example of that. What we found out when we were doing research with the Football Rules Committee and Football Oversight was that the most dangerous play by a factor of 5 times in college football is the kickoff. And so this year you see that we're able to make it a little more like a punt in that you can fair catch the ball on a kickoff. Now you don't want to take the onside kick out of the game because it's a terrific strategic matter, but for a variety of reasons, and it's not just concussions, it's shoulder injuries, it's back injuries, it's neck injuries, it's knee injuries. Armed with the knowledge that the kickoff play is 5 times more dangerous than any other play in the game, we didn't feel like we could do otherwise than try some new rules. I will tell you right now, the kickoff will go away in college football if we can't see a decline in the injuries that come from this. And so there are a lot of people that are working on it. It's a wonderful game. It's a big part of the fabric of America. But the game of football at all levels is going to have to evolve, or we're going to find continued declines in the amount of participation.
It seems that the challenges for football in general just don't stop, and a hot topic right now is the fact that college football is being challenged right now in the court system in a federal court in California. Have you thought about what will happen to college sports if the plaintiffs in that case are successful, and then universities are not limited in the amounts they can pay student athletes to play for them?
I've thought about it almost constantly. It is truly a bet the industry lawsuit. The judge ruled on it 18 months ago and was was overruled by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. The court trial is going on right now. There's today is actually the last day of the hearings, and the judge's premise is that we're in an antitrust environment and that conferences need to go and make their own rules. Well, I think those of us that are involved in the enterprise don't believe that that's a particularly good idea, but we're being measured against antitrust standards that are used in the trucking industry or in the asphalt paving business, and it doesn't apply particularly well to higher education and to the management of sports. So we may find ourselves in an environment that's entirely deregulated, and the plaintiffs' lawyers that are involved in this have said, once we're done with this, we're going to challenge the number of scholarships you can have and the number of coaches you can have and the number of contests you can play and all of those kinds of things. So we find ourselves in a very litigious environment right now, and it could dramatically change the way college sports is managed and the manner in which we contest the things that we try and contest every Saturday.
I think this is a really hot topic, and so I'm going to pass this down to the panelists because I'm very curious as to how it affects each and every one of you in the industries that you're in. Judy, I'm going to pose the same question to you. What are your thoughts about what will happen in your conference specifically if the plaintiffs are successful in this case?
Well, Rachel, the same question was, have you thought about it? And my answer would be yes.
Well, all right then.
No, I mean, I think Bob described the process and what we're all going through. Past that, we're thinking about it nonstop and trying to figure that out. And, we'll deal with what comes.
If you were my client and you answered yes like that in a deposition, I would tell you you were amazing. That's exactly how you're supposed to answer. Just yes, no, nothing else. Judy, I'll ask you a different question.
That's experience, by the way, that caused that.
I got that. I'll end that question for now and move on. Judy, there's something that you brought up because you talked about the Arkansas versus North Texas game. Even though the vast majority of revenues accrue to the Power 5 schools, it seems like the schools from the non-Power 5 groups can still compete. This past weekend, you mentioned a game. Do you feel that a number of the non-Power schools this past weekend, a number of non-power schools upset teams from the Power 5 conferences. Do you see the wealth divide changing that in the future?
I hope not. I think there were 9 games, not that we were keeping track or anything, but 9 of those victories this past weekend, and I'm not sure I can remember another weekend where we had that many in one weekend. So, I think I worry the financial divide's going to continue to increase. The data all shows that. The projections all show that. But I just would hate, I think it's such a big part of the game to have the underdog where, obviously I'm biased with our programs, but I feel like we have great players in Conference USA. We might not have as many great players on every team as the Big 12 has on their team, but on any given day, it can happen. And so I would hate to see, I think that's what makes March Madness special in basketball. It's a little easier to do in basketball when you only have 5 players on the floor at once. But I would hate to see the day that we're not able to do that. So I think our universities understand who they are, but they also strive and they want that challenge and they want to compete against those guys.
If I may, to Judy's point, there have been a number of significant changes in college football over the years. Probably the most significant in terms of overall competitiveness has been the reduction in scholarships. There was a day when scholarships were unlimited. Then it went to 120, then it went to 105, then it went to 95, now it's at 85. There are a lot of good football players on all 10 FBS conference rosters, and there are a lot of good football players in the FCS ranks as well. You know, you see somebody like Nicholls State come and beat Kansas with a, you know, very, very different scholarship setup. They're only allowed 63 scholarships, but there are a lot of good football players on the North Texas team and others in Conference USA, and it has made the game better. The reason college football is where it is today is because of the broader distribution of talent. Instead of sitting on somebody's bench, they're on somebody's field competing.
I agree with you. There's definitely a lot of talent. So I will ask you, do you see the college football playoff format expanding to 8 teams so that the champion from each of the power conferences will be included each year? Oh, that's to you, Bob.
Yeah, don't look down here.
No, you can answer
You're
too.
my
Don't look
boss
down here.
technically, so I'm deferring.
I thought the lack of eye contact might get me out of it.
I'm just really glad you're sitting closest to Rachel.
Yeah, you know, the thought hasn't been lost on me that you're the only one up here that's not sending me money. I don't see us going there anytime soon. You know, there can certainly be advocacy for a larger format. It's been talked about to go to 6, and there are some interesting aspects to that. There's been talk about going to 12 or to 8, but we've got a 12-year contract. We're only 4 years in. I think what we found is, and as Gina said, the acceptance of the format and the selection process is so high that I just don't see it happening. The fact is, at a purely practical level, ESPN loves having 5 autonomy conferences chasing after 4 seats, and I think the drama of having somebody like a Central Florida that goes through the season last year undefeated and vies for a spot in the playoff is really good. The narrative around the game is great, and I wouldn't say we'll never go to it, but I would be very surprised if we gave it any serious consideration until very close to the end of this current 12-year contract, and we haven't had any conversations about expanding the field so far. This is a terrific enterprise, and I just think we need to be really careful before we tamper with it.
Good answer, Commissioner. Good answer. But
I was gonna say we need 8.
Yeah, no, I mean, to add to that, obviously in light of what I was just talking about earlier with the student athletes, and ultimately, you know, we talk about, you know, going from 4 to 8, but how is that going to affect the student athlete? And you know, it's only grown. The amount of time that they have to put into preparing from week to week, and ultimately to add another level to the playoff, how it affects the fan base and the travel. You know, from our little end of the world, right? We play in a very large stadium. So if all of a sudden there's another level of playoffs, how does that affect the bowls? We've been a part of the landscape of postseason college football for over 100 years. And so if you add another level to the playoffs, do the bowls become the NIT? And I certainly hope not. It's one of the things that makes college football unique is the bowl system. And why do we have to be like everybody else?
Yeah, and I would just add to that, you're not only diluting the brand, but I think you go full circle into what we've all been talking about with player safety and everything that adds another game onto that schedule for those student athletes only furthers and highlights that conversation. And certainly I'm going to advocate for what we have because that's where I get my check from. But I have, again, going back to what I said earlier, it really has been such an amazing process to see how this postseason has transformed to where we are today. And the fan acceptance, but the player excitement where we've been able to maintain those bowl traditions, but still create this amazing product of the college football playoff, and the inclusion that it's created has been spectacular. So I'd hate to see it change. We'll support whatever happens, and we will get that support from all of our partners. But it's easy for fans and often media to go out and talk and be on social media about we need 8, we need 16, and have their various calculations and formulas to get there. But these items that we're talking about today are often not taken into account when you throw stuff like that out on the wall.
Well, I think, too, for context, it might be interesting for you to know what our priorities were when we went into this. You know, it was, it wasn't just about finding a way to get to 4 or 6 or 8. We recognized that the postseason and the bowl system had been very good to college football, and we wanted to do nothing at all to hurt that. So we wanted to integrate the playoff into the bowl system if that was at all possible. We also believed and continue to believe that the months of October and November are the best regular season in all of sports. I think it's hard to argue that the regular season in college football in October and November isn't just the best there is in any sport. And then the other thing we wanted to accomplish was a strengthening of the intersectional matchups in September. And you can see by a lot of the games that are scheduled during this month that we indeed have that. We have a lot more of the autonomy conferences playing each other. We have a lot more featured games. And I think right now we've achieved success in all 3 of those areas, and college football is better for it. So we need to be slow to evolve, and that doesn't mean it won't ever come up. But I don't think it's going to come up anytime soon for all the reasons you've heard.
I feel like I sound so negative, but I feel like the purpose of this is to talk about some of the challenges being faced in college football and how we move forward addressing those in the future. And
Well, negative, think of all the guys you've told no.
30 on my season. There has been a decline in ratings over the years, as well as a decline in attendance as far as college football games. Fans are consuming the product in so many different ways now, with many of the next generation being unplugged. So I want to know, and Gina, I'll start with you, how does changing digital technology and the decline in the number of cable subscribers affect the future audience?
A little bit of this goes back to our relationship with ESPN and how close-knit we are with not only their goals and directives for the regular season, but certainly how they position the college football playoff in the postseason. And I think we're in a little bit of a unique situation where we've got such a marquee event and series of games that we're not seeing that same, I don't even want to use the word drastic, because in the grand scheme of things, the percentages that are dropping right now are really not that bad when you line up college football regular season games with a Major League Baseball game or an NBA game. We're still higher than those, even in the regular season. The varied consumption that we see right now with OTT, I think last year we had like a 21% uptick in consumption of OTT, and that's going to continue to rise. And that's that sweet spot of demographic that we were talking about from the 18 to 34-year-olds, male or female, of how they're consuming sports right now. Fortunately for us, as I mentioned earlier, the college football playoff is presented on every format possible that that ESPN has in their suite of platforms. So we're not missing too much in that space, but we do know that it's happening. I think our goal, obviously, is to present a compelling story behind the brand of the college football playoff, the games, the matchups, so that we still have that tune-in regardless of matchup, but it's a must-see event. And everything that we do during the regular season and ESPN does during the regular season to lead up to that must-see event environment then shows in the results of those percentages of uptick in the consumption. So we will continue to hopefully ride the current technology, and surprisingly enough, ESPN just signed their first deal with Twitter and are very into the Twitter side of sports right now, and that's a whole other kind of realm that they're going to enter and hopefully utilize the college football playoff to share some of those new technologies in the consumption of college football. But it's very important to keep an eye on, and again, I think as long as we continue to find ways to share the content and make sure that it's adaptable to whatever those new consumption styles are, we're going to be in fairly good shape, but certainly something we're going to keep our eyes on.
Thank you. Again, you gave me another plug. I do work with Twitter and ESPN, so definitely everyone should check that out as well. Andrew, we've been talking about a lot of different challenges that college football, or the game of college football, is faced with today. What can sponsors do to help with some of the challenges that we've been discussing?
When I think of a company like us and what we can do is we not only reach the core football fan, but we actually extend reach, right? And I think that's what a sponsorship or a partnership we have with some of these folks help with. If you think about it, we do billions of cans of Dr. Pepper each year. That's, a lot of times we'll be doing something football related on them, and I think that helps extend reach. We have campaigns like Fansville or Larry Culpepper, where that brings in the casual fan in a different way, and I think, again, helps make the game relevant. And lastly, something I'm really proud of we've done for a long time is a college tuition throw, and it's something we take to campuses and do mostly via Facebook and other digital and social partners, where we've given away $10 million, and we've used the platform of the college football championship games as a way to leverage and get that message out. But I think that's a good way of bringing people in and helping draw attention from the younger crowd. And to me, so much is about keeping the franchise or the system healthy, and that is bringing in younger people all the time. And I think we reach that demographic really well, and really, I think, can add a lot to what college football does.
I'm not just going to say this because you're sitting next to me, because I say this often when we're out talking about the college football playoff, but we use what Dr. Pepper did as a case study about how sponsor integration into brand promotion can really sync and have a great marriage together and really leverage a brand in ways that, for us, we don't have that bandwidth or that reach. And they really did take a gamble in year one on aligning so strongly with the college football brand and the introduction of Larry Culpepper. And that whole campaign, it turned Larry Culpepper into this rock star. During our first year here in Dallas, we had media outlets requesting to interview Larry. We brought Larry through Audio Avenue. And every time Larry was out there promoting the Dr. Pepper brand, he in turn was also promoting the college football playoff. So it really was truly a case study, not only for us, but ESPN also shares the same sentiment that brand cohesion between what Dr. Pepper did and the college football playoff is really what it's all about, because then it becomes organic. You're not forcing that association onto maybe the casual fan in another way that you could.
Andrew, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, I've had the pleasure, Andrew, of getting a little behind the scenes of Fansville. And as this thing rolls out, it is going to be a tremendous new program. So just a little plug there.
Fansville's our new campaign, which is a lot of fun, too. So a lot of little Easter eggs in the commercials, like Eddie George and Les Miles, and some cool capers are going to ensue this year. So keep on watching.
Andrew, if I can offer a suggestion, I feel like that tuition throw, you should do it for alums too, who are maybe trying to pay back their student loans. I think that would be so successful. That's all I was thinking the whole time you were saying that.
You're kind of the second person with that suggestion. I had a table over there suggesting we have employees do it and see if they can throw for $10,000 in any given weekend.
I think we're on to something here.
There you go.
Bob, there has been amazing financial growth around college football, particularly on the high end. Do you see the trend lines around revenue and expenses being sustainable over the long run?
How come you're giving them all the softballs?
You should take it as a compliment.
Well, I hesitate to describe how long I've been around this business, but it's a long time. And questions around sustainability have been asked throughout that time. Coaching salaries can't keep going up. Scholarship costs can't keep going up. The payouts from bowl games can't keep going up, and yet they all do. And so, is it sustainable? I'd worry about some of the comments that Judy made. I think that is there a growing gap between the haves and the have-nots? You can certainly make a case that there is. The college football playoff, one of the things that has been good about it is it's very egalitarian. All 5 of the autonomy conferences are paid exactly the same amount, regardless of whether they're in the event or not, and all 5 of the non-autonomy conferences are paid exactly the same thing, regardless of whether they're in it or not. There are very broad distribution of the resources, and the aspiration is to keep the enterprise of college football strong. But I don't think anybody could have anticipated $9 million a year head coaches, And I don't think that, you know, the old adage about the facilities arms race, or the arms race in general, and you've heard it for years and years. I would tell you that the only thing worse than being in the arms race is not being in the arms race, because if you're not, you're going to fall behind. And you know, the things we do to curry favor with 17 and 18-year-old aspiring student athletes is truly astonishing. But I don't see any abatement of it, and I haven't seen any over the last 35 years, so I don't expect to see it going forward. Now, if our model changes dramatically, all bets are off, and it's, you know, there are some places where an adjustment might be a really good thing, but absent some external force that forces us on it, I think the competition will keep going.
Judy, same question.
Yeah, I think for us, the circumstances that probably the schools that Bob works with have not had to deal with, although it's all relative. Everybody in their league's not at the same place. But I think for us, what it's done is caused our institutions to really think hard about how they use their resources. I'm not saying you're Stone, but...
I'm listening.
All right. So because our resources are more limited, our athletic directors, our presidents have constant conversations about the focus of where we spend our money and what choices we make. And so in a weird way, it's really caused our institutions to focus entirely on the good of the student athlete and our decisions, you know, how can we make it better for the young men and young women in our programs? And so, you know, in my head, I think, you know, that's what we've always done. But I think when your resources are limited compared to maybe your competitor, it's really forced us to do that. They don't pretend that they're something else, but they're still going to work as hard as they can. They're extremely competitive, so don't take that as, you know, our guys have put their hands up and said, we can't do this. They believe they can. They've just been very much more focused and more calculated in how they do their work. And so it's been an interesting process to get to this point, because I will tell you, we weren't always at this point. It was always chasing, trying to be like that Autonomy 5 school that was, you know, in your same state. And again, competitive as can be, and think that every time they play, they have a chance to win. But it's just changed the focus, and I'm really proud of our group to get to that point in how they make their decisions.
Judy.
Yes, ma'am.
Assuming expenses around FBS football continue to grow at a steady rate, do you believe institutions will continue to allocate institutional dollars, including student fees, to support it?
Big topics, you know, every time we hear somebody's having a vote to increase student fees. Most of our schools, but not all, receive student fees. I don't know if you're aware, but in Virginia recently, the state legislature got involved, and so now only a portion of an athletic department's budget can be funded by student fees, and it depends on what level that athletic department or that program plays at. So for us, it has to continue, I think. You know, we've done what we could do with our media contracts. We've improved them drastically. Our games are on, an earlier conversation, Facebook and Twitter. We're trying to do creative and new things, but as the expenses continue to grow, our universities have made a decision that athletics is important. It can do great things for a university. The data and the stories, I don't know if it's good or bad in this room, but what Lane Kiffin and that football program has done for Florida Atlantic University is unbelievable. Their admissions applications is like up 40% after last year's season. So our presidents do realize that athletics can be a great help. You know, we always talk about the front porch. Obviously, if everything goes right, if it goes bad, it can get you pretty quickly. But, so I think our universities will always support, but, you know, there may be a time where they say enough's enough, and where are you going to find some other money?
Your answers keep leading into my next question, so I'm going to stick with you, Judy. And it's also because we go way back. But several of the schools in your conference actually started football programs at the FBS level, UTSA, Charlotte, and then one dropped it and then added it back, UAB. How important are these programs to the university's communities?
You know, and Britton could talk about this for a long time, but the UAB story in particular is really fascinating. I don't think I would ever recommend a university do that, but what that process did for that school and that community, I can't even explain. So there was not much in Birmingham, you know, it was Alabama this, Auburn this, and there really wasn't a lot of attention. Nobody seemed to care. So they decided to drop the program. And the entire community and some very well-to-do people got involved. I think the key in all of this at UAB was the head coach, Bill Clark. Bill Clark stays. They don't play football for 2 years, and he stays there. He's committed. If that man, who is just kind of like the Energizer Bunny, he's a recruiter, if he goes, I'm not sure the whole story comes out the same way, but he stays committed to that program. And now they're building a new stadium. I mean, they fill up their stadium on game days. It's really remarkable what it's done for that university. Our other two examples, I think UTSA, when they added a football program, it really introduced that university to San Antonio. A lot of people weren't aware of a lot of things going on there. And when they added football and they play in the Alamo Dome, I mean, they tailgate better than anybody's I've ever seen. And, you know, when I first went to a game there, when UTSA had a third down, the fans started making noise, and we had to say, no, it's not. It's when the other team has a third down that you make noise. So there's an education process for a community that's never had football. But what it's done for that university locally has been huge.
And this will be the last question, and I'm kind of asking for my own selfish reasons. Goes to you, Michael. From a ticketing standpoint, how important are the matchups that are at AT&T Stadium and with the Cotton Bowl, and will we continue to see them?
Well, all right. First of all, just a little fun fact here. Marquette played in the very first Cotton Bowl against TCU before they dropped their football program.
There we
so
go.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. Drop the football program.
Buzz Buvid was the starting quarterback, the star quarterback. So no, to answer your question, obviously the matchups are huge for us. I mean, that's an obvious answer. I think ultimately we have to look at the matchups over a long-term period. This year we're the semifinal. The semifinal will sell itself. Guaranteed number 1 versus number 4 and number 2 versus number 3 in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl this year. Next year, we're guaranteed to get the highest ranked team from the group of 5. We had Western Michigan a few years back, and sure would be nice if
we'll
North
see
Texas.
You next year.
Yeah. So, we look at that matchup, obviously, and how it affects ticket sales locally. And then that third year, we're guaranteed a top 10 matchup, very similar to what we had last year with USC and Ohio State. And it presents new challenges for us, there's no doubt. We have to look at it long-term on a local level, right? How does it affect our local season ticket base? How do we reach those folks? In the past, we had a steady dose of Big 12 versus SEC. That meant, you may not be an Oklahoma fan and they're coming to the Cotton Bowl, but your next-door neighbor is, your coworker is. So it was easy to give your Cotton Bowl tickets away. USC and Ohio State, there's only so many fans in North Texas that cheer for those two teams. So ultimately, it's going to really be up to us to figure out a way to engage the local community at a new level for us. Take the emphasis a little bit off of the matchup and put it more on the Cotton Bowl experience. And we've got some shiny new toys next door to us with Texas Live, new Rangers ballpark about to open up, the Lowe's Hotel, and I think there's more on the way. So ultimately, that's what we're trying to get our arms around right now, and to see how those team matchups year after year, but we have to look at it long term.
Thank you so much. And can we give this panel a round of applause? I know all the questions weren't easy, but thank you for your honesty and thank you for answering them to the best of your ability.